We all wanted to use machine learning, but many people fail because we're using machine learning solutions for problems that were not supposed to be solved in that way.
We should pick up the technology as soon as possible to solve the problem that we want to solve as fast as possible.
We're also overdoing the Gen AI. We're overusing it.
Two things that needs to happen so that someone becomes a great engineer or AI engineer. The first one is that welcome everyone on this new episode of Let's Talk. I'm super happy to be here today with Alessandro Romano. Alessandro, super excited for this episode. I have many questions. The way I read about you on your website is that you're a data scientist, musician, public speaker, not necessarily in that order. So 2 questions for you to kickstart this episode together. The first one, how would you define yourself from a professional perspective? And the second is, do you have any fun stories or learnings from that conference where you were with Miguel?
Yeah, first of all, I usually say that I'm a data scientist, even though I don't really like to say, okay, I'm a data scientist and that's it. Because in my opinion, based on my experience, it doesn't really mean anything. You have to specify exactly what you do, what's the business domain you're working in, and all this stuff. And long story short, one example is also within my team, I have many data scientists, I work with many data scientists, but we all come from different domains. So it's really important to understand, okay, but what do you exactly do? In a nutshell, I'm a data scientist, as some people say today, AI engineer. I don't know what that means exactly. Yeah, and then of course, I do a lot of public speaking, so I had to write on my website that I'm a public speaker. I'm thinking about switching to maybe data advocate. Think it fits better what I do because public speaking is probably too general. Yeah, I do public speaking, but it's more about going on stage as a data advocate, talking about data project. I'm a technical person. I'm not a mental coach or something like this.
You're not Tony Robbins. We got it.
Yeah. So maybe I'll switch. Speaking of Miguel, yeah, we were together for 1 week in India. There was a terrific trip. I mean, we were so into all this data hype stuff. It was incredible. We had a lot of fun. Yeah. And we were also bonding a lot because of, I'm from Italy. He's from Spain. We were on the same flight when we were going to Bangalore. When I left, I was kind of upset because it was such a great adventure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you share maybe a few more insights regarding the conference? Like, what are some nuggets that you uncovered, maybe from your own speech, but also what are some cool things or cool people that you've met there?
Oh, there are so many things to say. Probably the first one, let's start with what I did. I arrived in Bangalore. The first day we were just visiting the city. We had 1 day off, just settling and adapting to the new time zone, even though for us it's just 3.5 hours. The second day, which was the first day of the conference, we went to the opening. We met so many people because we were the international speakers. So a lot of questions. Also, it was really interesting for us to meet the people from Analytics Media because I'm also an instructor for them. I've never met them in person. So that was the first time. And I was really excited. It's a great team. On my first day, I left the conference because someone invited me for a podcast. I went to the city center to record the podcast, which will be out soon, I guess. And then basically that costed me 5 hours because going from our hotel to the city center, it was such a mess. It was really, really expensive time-wise. So what I did was leaving at 12. It was only 20 kilometers, by the way. I left at 12. And then for recording the podcast, I stayed at that company for about 1 hour and 30 minutes. And in total, I left the hotel at 12 and I was back at 7:30 p.m. So it was kind of insane. I spent so much time in the traffic jam, in the car. Traffic jam in Bangalore, it's a real thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So we had Miguel, you were at that conference. I would like to take us back a little bit to your mission, what you've been doing. So I was reviewing your different socials, including mainly Medium, your website, some posts on LinkedIn. So my first question to you before I ask you anything of like those articles that I found that I'm curious about that we can learn from you. What are you most excited about what you're doing? You also have the podcast. So what's your current mission and what are you excited about on that professional journey of yours?
I still really don't know which direction I'm going. I really talk like a junior data scientist now. I have years of experience. There's so many inputs and I've done so many different things during the last 5 years, even more, that I have the feeling I'm still experimenting a lot. Now that I can definitely think of a couple of things that I love to do, like writing, that's definitely something I love to do. I wish I have more time to do it. Sometimes also do it for external companies. If they need to write a technical article about something specific, maybe I help them to craft the article. Another topic I would like to dive into is creating more video content. That's something I'm not doing at the moment. I mean, I'm doing it for private courses sometimes, but I would like to create more free content videos for YouTube, Substack. Speaking about creating content, I'll probably do it more in the context of this new podcast I'm working on, the My Data Guest. It's a bit different from what you do. It's more about like still interviewing guests, but at the same time creating learning content, working with another person, and we want to, I don't know, like maybe pick a topic and create a content around it. So that's definitely something I miss now, creating more videos. And I get so many requests about people saying, okay, hey, can you create this? Can you talk about agent? Can you talk about this Agentic thing? Can you create a video? And that's really time expensive. So maybe I'll do it more in the near future.
That's awesome. Got it. I would like to go into your Medium because you have some interesting things. We just had a conversation with Miguel, including data scientist role. We talked about AI engineering. We defined data scientists are people who have a very deep understanding of statistics and models, not only about LLMs, but also any kind of models to do classification or regression problem and that you can tune parameters on, etc. So what's your own definition of a data scientist? And do you also ship AI agents in production? Do you work with AI frameworks, back-end, front-end? What kind of things have you been teaching, talking about in the past month or years?
When I think about the role of a data scientist in a company or in a specific business domain, definitely I always connect that role to exploding and exploring data. So you cannot build anything if you don't have some sort of high quality ground truth, some sort of high quality data you can exploit. The terminology, if you think about the terminology, that will probably stay. So the terminology stays. There are no ways you can say, okay, now we don't talk about data scientists anymore. I think it stays. But of course, as we were doing a couple of years ago, this is not new. You can have different sub-roles. So maybe you can have a data scientist who is more keen about like statistics. Another data scientist is more in the direction of software engineering. As I am, for instance, I'm coming more from that field. I think it's kind of the same for agents. For me, AI engineering until maybe 3 years ago, it was more AI DevOps. So for me, like an AI engineer was a person who was maintaining the AI infrastructure, talking about models, complex pipelines, things like this. It's a mix between a data scientist and a data engineer. It's not a DevOps, but because it also has knowledge about maintaining models. So it's more like an AI DevOps. But now AI engineering means also AI tools or systems. So I'm not sure in which direction we're going exactly. And I like to talk about this topic, but at the same time, I have to say that I don't really care. What I usually say is like, I'm an engineer. I like to build stuff. I like to find solutions for the problems that I need to solve. I don't mind if you call me like AI engineer, data scientist, whatever. I had to pick a name for my website. I decided to go for data scientist. So I don't really know where we're going. Sometimes I don't care. But as I said, I mean, I like to talk about this topic. It's a kind of ethical question. I see a lot of people complaining about this AI engineering roles appearing on LinkedIn. Yeah, some people complain about that. They're like, what is this AI engineering about? That's a new thing. Maybe they were saying the same for data scientists back then. I don't know.
My view on this, and this is just my opinion, is that an AI engineer is a real thing. And there is actually a conference about it. So let me share that really quick. And there is the Latent Space podcast where they do like amazing content. And so my definition of an AI engineer today is someone that has backend, ideally full stack experience of building things, and that seamlessly integrate in general LLMs, mainly through APIs, potentially fine tuning and deploying their own models on an infrastructure. And so I think that building that and like agentic architectures or agentic workflows with libraries like AI Crew or LangGraph or these kind of things, I would define that as an AI engineer, meaning that it's more about delivering value with full stack applications and architecturing them with technical requirements, like shipping this in production and having observability and managing specific amount of volume is very different than my local host project of 2 LLM talking to each other or something. So I think that this is the direction where I would go on AI engineering, and like with the vector stores and graphs and Anthropic, OpenAI, LLMs, Gemini, etc. What do you think? Would you build with all of this? Do you agree with that definition?
I do. I mean, that's exactly the point. For me, like having a new role or having new labels is fine. I'm not one of those who complains about this new role. One joke that I make very often, that I do very often, is when I'm presenting something, maybe I'm on stage showing some code, agents, whatever. What I like to ask, because this is something I use to explain why orchestrating agents can be useful for some classes of problems. And I usually compare it with very complex prompts. And then I ask, are there in the room prompt engineers? People are really scared about raising their hand. They're like, I'm not sure, maybe I will, oops. And I'm like, okay, come on, guys, raise your hand. There's still a lot of confusion about this. The things that you do as a prompt engineer, whatever, the things you do as an AI engineer, everything happened so fast during the last 3 years since ChatGPT was released to the consumers that we are in the process of figuring out these new roles, these new ways of working. So honestly, whenever there is a new role, there is a new label, I'm always like, okay, fine, maybe we need this. Maybe, I mean, it's just a label to clarify what this person is about, what this person does. I'm always happy about that. And then if we don't need it, it will go away by itself. Whenever we don't need something, it goes away. We don't have to push it.
100%.
I'm with you.
I got that. So I do have some questions. As a matter of fact, I would have raised my hand because I think that being a prompt engineer these days, building with AI is like a must. You need prompts. I mean, you need to be efficient at instruction. It's like shipping instructions. You can do such crazy things with amazing prompts. Maybe you don't want to be labeled like just a prompt engineer, but I think that you need to be a great prompt engineer to work with AI systems that leverage LLMs. And I think that it's more than proven now that there are very cool things to be built with that. Got it. You're a builder. You mentioned use cases. You mentioned that you just want to build things and you care about what you're building. So I was checking your current company, but we can pick either a use case of your company or like the workshop of the conference or any Medium article. But I would love to hear you on some recent things that really excited you in terms of building, or something that you've shared with people or that you've taught to people that were very interesting to them, some cool problems solved. That would be awesome.
We can definitely follow up on what I was presenting at the conference.
Let's do it.
Essentially, I was talking about like presenting a couple of use cases with Crew AI. So the topic was agents orchestration. So basically I had a talk and then a proper workshop. It was a very long one, like 8 hours workshop.
That's a hackathon.
Yeah, it was insane. Workshop. I did my best to keep people engaged, but we were kind of getting tired at some point. I think it went better than what I was expecting. Also, Miguel, in the same time, he was we're in the same place running 2 different workshops.
Yeah.
I was talking about Crew AI, he was talking about LangGraph. We're doing that in parallel with 2 different groups.
Okay.
I think for both of us, it went better than expected, but definitely keeping the tension high, 8 hours workshop, it's tough.
So Crew AI was the main topic of your conference. And like, can you tell us more about the workshop? I'd love to hear like the context. Like, did you had people building with Crew AI live and like coaching them on like solving their problems? What was the goal and like, what was your core message?
I can show you directly.
Oh, yes. Let's do a workshop of 8 hours right now.
We do an 8 hours workshop.
Let's do it. Yeah. Stay with us, guys.
So basically, without diving too much into why I have this website, there are many things that I don't like about the classical way of running workshops. First of all is the slide deck. So whenever you have some slides, you're presenting them and then you have links in the slides, instructions, pieces of code you want the people to use during the workshop. So all these dynamic components that you're going to lose after introducing the workshop. So what I decided to do, this is the second or the third time I'm doing this. The second time I also did it at the PyCon Germany. I created a website which is hosted on GitHub. As you can see here I don't know if you can see the URL, but it's hosted on GitHub. It's also open source. So if you want to reuse it, you can do it. And what I do is presenting the slides. So I have a set of slides, a slide deck, which is also reachable from here, from this presentation. And then after this, I introduce this website. And I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to use this website for 8 hours. This is an extension of me. I'll be there to help you during the workshop, but all the things you need are here. And it starts with prerequisites about how to install stuff, how to set up your machine, things like this. And then I have a set of assignments. And this is the core of my workshop. And the nice thing about the assignment, I can show you one, is that you have a clear overview of what you have to build. And in addition to this, which is the most important thing, you have links that I can also update. If something goes wrong, I can update them live. You have code examples. So you have nice formatted code examples that you can copy and use to solve this assignment. One example, this assignment is about creating your first agent, which is an agent that is a crew. It basically is a set of agents that is in charge of optimizing your prompt. So we're basically creating a prompt enhancement agent. And to do this, you need to follow these steps. You get an input, you improve the structure, and then you optimize the prompt based on the LLM you want to send the prompt to, and then you get an output. And to do this, most likely you will rely on these code examples. And I do the same for all the assignments. This is content creation with guardrails, fraud detection workflow. And then I have a final project I can also show you, which is about creating an AI-powered interviewer. So you create an interface you can interview with if you want to prep for interviews for Google or Meta. You can talk to this assistant and get questions. Okay,
content creation with guardrails. Interesting. So I'm assuming, you take Crew AI. I'm more of a LangGraph team because I used it more. Do you want to have a take on that? I've heard recently the AI SDK that is like more front-end oriented, but is like a lot of people are using it. I've heard also Crew AI, LangGraph, and I've heard some others. What do you think about the framework in itself? How do you think about building with them? How do you compare them? What do you share with the people in your framework? Because you're going fully with Crew AI, but is there a reason behind Crew AI in the first place?
I like both, honestly. I'm not a big fan of LangChain. I don't really like it, but I also use LangGraph. Honestly, the reason why I'm talking about Crew AI here is because I wanted to focus on these multi-agent orchestration solutions. I like the idea of having multiple agents with different roles that are working together toward one specific solution, one specific goal. And that's the idea behind Crew AI. In the end, what you do with Crew AI is creating multiple agents, let's say one research agent, one data analyst agent, one software engineering agent. You put them together into one single crew. And this crew, if you want to go one level up in terms of abstraction, that crew is an agent. Because in the end, that crew is what gives you the output. And then, of course, you have these concepts of having multiple agents, but in the end, you only work with the crews. The main difference between Crew AI and LangGraph is about, without diving into what can be a good framework for going live, having a production-ready system, apart from those things, the main difference is that with Crew AI, you rely a lot on having these different roles that are working together, while with LangGraph is more about single agents doing something. It's a different way of solving a problem. And I think that for some classes of problems, I think Crew AI is better. But in my opinion, you need both. Can you do the same things you do with Crew AI with LangGraph and the other way around? Yeah, some. There is a huge overlap. But these are two different libraries with two different goals. The history behind these libraries is definitely different. So in my opinion, because I get this question often, and I got this question a lot of times during the conference, people asking me, what is your top 3, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just check them all and try to use them all. Then whenever you dive deep into one problem, because you're really trying to solve a complex problem and not just a toy example, at that point, you will understand which library you actually need.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you about observability and then go back to those 5 use cases. But just before that, I agree with you. I really like LangGraph for the way, I feel that LangGraph is lower level and that you have more control about the workflows that you can create. And if you use a tool like Code or something and you have good examples, you can build things very fast. With the same architecture, I have a chart, which is basically a spectrum of from workflow to agents. And a lot of the time we are talking about agents when all we need is just a good if-else situation. And so I feel like speaking workflow, then agentic workflow, and then agents, and then whatever, I think is a good mental model for me. And so if I were to build very detailed workflow or agentic workflow, I might prefer going with something like LangGraph.
Me too.
Okay, cool to hear. And so if I were to think about more business metric, I have less of an engineering pipeline mindset, then maybe I want to have some agents and assign them role. But I don't know, because I haven't played enough with Crew AI. So can we go back to the use cases and can you tell me where would you use Crew AI? Because there you were using it in different ways. A content creator guardrail, I think it was fraud detection, which is regression models are very good for fraud detection, or classical ML. Going with LLMs to solve fraud detection is also an interesting one. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, so maybe I can show you once again that this is just an assignment. It's more like an exercise to give you a feeling of how to use, in this case, the conditional tasks and this hierarchical process in Crew AI. I made this assignment to focus on these two topics. And of course, when you reach this assignment, you also need to know some other concepts about Crew AI. I can give you an idea of what's the focus here. First of all, as you said, when it's about fraud detection, this is an exercise, this is an assignment. But when it's about fraud detection, of course, there are different ways you can tackle that problem, and fraud detection systems based on machine learning and deep learning models, and we don't want to touch that. The idea here is that what if you have this transaction list where some of the transactions are actually anomalies, in this case, these transactions, and you only have strings, so you don't really have time to set up a model, and you're like, okay, I got this document, some of them look odd, but I don't know which ones. If we look at this transaction, if you try to eyeball what's wrong with this transaction, maybe you don't really see it.
Yeah. 9999 maybe.
Yeah, it's high amount, but maybe card 999, maybe that's fine. I don't know. Maybe it does end with 9999. Anyhow, the time is odd and is also requesting a high amount. Some people can say, okay, but you're in Las Vegas. I don't know. This can be problematic. How much is this a problem for the company? We don't know yet. So that's the idea. You have some transactions and you're like, okay, how can I review all this stuff? The idea about this is that you can create multiple agents One agent is looking at the transactions. Another agent is being called only if we require some sort of escalation, because maybe we see that one of these transactions, it looks weird. And we're like, okay, I think it looks weird, but I want to call another agent. And the difference between using LangGraph in this case is that you're not creating a workflow, but you're creating multiple agents and you're not telling them how to work together. You can put some details about how they're going to collaborate, but the actual orchestration is up to them. In this case, I have an agent that is looking at the transactions. Then I have an agent that is looking at what the first agent is creating.
Right.
And then I have a third agent, which is a manager, which is in charge of overseeing the work of all the agents in the crew, and perhaps point to one specific agent and saying, hey, I think you need to redo your work because the last agent said that this is not an anomaly. So try to be sure if there's actually an anomaly or not.
Yeah.
This kind of collaboration is not a workflow. It's more like a reasoning process between the agents. So they decide, especially if you have hierarchical, they decide how to approach that, how to solve that specific problem. And maybe for some solutions, that's better. For some solutions, you want to go in this direction. It depends.
I love that, man. That's super interesting. There are many things to ask about that. So I would like to go in multiple directions here. I'm thinking about observability. So I like the way it makes you think in systems. And so independently of the framework that you're going to use, or you can even build it from scratch. In the end, you're between a workflow and an agent. But when you have agents working together to do a specific thing, which is very interesting to know how to do, because then when you ship systems in production, maybe some part of the systems actually need to have that level of agentic to have like that level of output that you're looking for that is not possible to solve in other ways. Or maybe you want to ship a first version and this is an easy way to ship it. And maybe then afterward you can reduce cost by like putting more guardrails and control over the different steps that you can take on. So all of that is awesome. So I have two questions moving forward. Actually, there are 3 paths. You let me know which direction you want to go. The final project seemed very interesting and a lot of things to learn. Observability is a big one. With Miguel in the previous episode, which I recommend you to listen to, we discussed about OPIC and Longsmith and other solutions. So curious to hear you on that one too. That's another option. And a third option is like Drift, because I know that you have a very cool Medium article about fine-tuning. Maybe we can touch on all of those, but which one do you want to dive into?
Let's talk about observability. That's definitely a huge topic now. A lot of people trying to understand how to improve observability with these systems. And I think what people really mean is you're dealing with not deterministic systems. So you don't really know what's happening under the hood and you don't know how much you can trust them. The biggest problem here is that whenever you run an agent that is backed up by an LLM, you don't know what's the thinking process under the hood. Now there are some ways of looking into this process. Optic, I think, is one of them. I mean, there are different ways. With Crew AI, just because we're talking about Crew AI, but it doesn't mean much. But with Crew AI, I see that they're doing that a lot. They go in the direction of improving the output you get from the package, from the library. So whenever you run a crew, you have a really nice output about the thinking process, what the agents are kind of trying to achieve, which tools the agents are going to use, and so far, so on. And this is needed now because this can be black boxes, right?
Which frameworks could we use? You mentioned that Crew AI gives you some visibility, and then you can combine that with prediction. And the 2 other paths were like the fine-tuning Medium article, and the other one was the final project in that workshop of 8 hours. We still have 7 hours to go together.
Yeah,
so
yeah, right.
Good.
We still have 7 hours. So also, if I elaborate a bit more what I said regarding observability, we can also add that, which is a big part of my talk, actually. What I usually say to people is, okay, I'm showing you a framework. I want to give you a tool to solve problems. This is something I try to do as much as I can. I try to kind of give this tip to people. The main problem here is not, I want to learn Crew AI, I want to learn LangGraph. You can code a solution based on Crew AI. You can do the same with LangGraph. That's not a big deal. The problem is, how am I going to tackle one specific issue, one specific business use case? Which library and which solution do I have to implement to solve one specific business use case? Based on the class of problems that specific business case belong to, then you're going to pick the library and not the other way around. And that's something I try to teach a lot, especially when I do workshops and I see people struggling with this concept of understanding, okay, what should I do now? Which library do I need? Why can't we do this with LangGraph? Yes, of course, you can do it with LangGraph, you can do it with LangChain, but the problem is, did you understand in which class of problems are you working now? How to tackle that specific business use case. That's always a point. It reminds me of when we were struggling with machine learning. We're struggling like understanding which machine learning algorithm we had to use to solve one specific problem. And now we're basically dealing with the same. We all wanted to use machine learning, but many people failed because we were using machine learning solutions for problems that were not supposed to be solved in that way. And this is happening also right now. We're also like overdoing the Gen AI. We're overusing it.
What we were discussing earlier with Mikel, it reflects a lot of this, meaning that we should pick up the technology as soon as possible to solve the problem that we want to solve as fast as possible. I don't care about how elegant is the solution if the problem is worthless in the first place. And a lot of the times, I'm not even sure that this is going to be useful. So why would I overbuild it? So I think that from my perspective, there are two things that needs to happen in parallel so that someone becomes a great engineer or AI engineer, whatever title we want. The first one is that I think I should continuously play. I remember when I was very early in my career, I was like, what about Azure? What about AWS? What about GCP? I was always curious about what's behind. How is it using it? And how is that tool? And how does it compare to like Databricks doing data flows in Azure or ML flow libraries and monitoring and all of that? So I think that being curious about the technology in itself and playing around with it is a must for someone to be good, because if you don't have a good mental framework of what each technology does, then it's very hard to pick the right one. That said, I think that when we're on the field, meaning when we're actually solving business problems, or when you're a builder and you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you want to build things that are actually being used, your talent just becomes, how fast can I solve that problem to that many people? And like knowing that this actually is solving the problem and that is not another thing that I shipped that is actually worthless and that no one will ever use, but I'm proud of it. And so I think that those are like two big ideas. Any thoughts on that?
It is very connected to what I was saying. Problem solving is still there. It's not that you can avoid to design a solution. It's still there. And this is what people don't see now. They think that knowing what's the top three, knowing that the top three libraries, Gen AI libraries, is more useful than having the right problem-solving mindset. I'm not really old, but I'm coming from a generation where I had to write my C++ solution for real and playing with the memory and doing a lot of like weird stuff because I'm coming from that generation. And I really hope that people will say, you don't look like you're coming from that generation. I really hope they will say. But anyhow, I had to go through that phase, and that phase gave me the right problem-solving mindset, which is helping me also in these situations where I'm like, okay, I know that it's not about the library. Sometimes it is, but 80% of the time it's not about the library. It's about how you design a solution. And then based on that, you decide for which library you want to go.
Yeah. And I think that becoming great at executing on an idea is like half of the problem. And then having the right idea in the first place is like the other half of the problem.
Yeah.
You can have all the ideas in the world. If you don't know how to execute, it's worthless. And reversed, you can be the best engineer in the world. If you solve shitty problems, then you're stuck. I love that. And so you mentioned on that specific part, and then I'd love to talk about fine tuning. Some people who are like very into the systems and like what to build, but they're not asking themselves enough questions about what am I trying to solve? Why am I trying this in the first place? Who am I solving this problem to? How would they use it? Why would they use that and not something else, etc., etc.? And like continuously thinking about the problem and like what you're actually solving for. What do you say to those people who come at your workshops?
Try to understand the problem. Try to understand how you want to tackle it, how you want to design it. Then you move to the library. And now if we want to go specific, try to understand when do you need agentic AI? Because that's the biggest question. Behind all those questions about the best library ever for agentic AI, behind those questions, what I see is people struggling when they have to understand when to use agentic AI and for which classes of problems they have to apply that. And I know that they're struggling with it because I'm also struggling with it. It's complicated. It's not easy. I don't want to overuse it. And when I do it, I want to be sure that that's something I have to solve in that way. It's still a lot of like fake data influences around that are like, showing one toy example, so maybe one Python file example where they say, okay, this is how I solve this issue with agentic AI. This is not how companies work. Companies have complex problems to solve. And every time you have to solve a new problem, every time you're working on a new problem, you have to apply that solution. You have to kind of put that solution into a very complex machine, which is composed by thousands of classes, thousands of lines of code. It's complicated. And that's where you have to shine. That's where you have to make the right decisions and say, okay, I need agentic AI for this. It's going to be tough to integrate with my existing system, so I need to design it properly.
Now that one thing that I really also like to see in general is people who are questioning the problem in the first place. So sometimes it's easy to take an idea and just build it. But if I actually care, the end game of any business is ROI. And that's cliche. And there are like a lot of talks about the middle manager and these kind of things.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're a serious builder, you should care as much about the quality of your system as the problem you're solving. Because if you continuously, as said before, solve not the right problem, you're not going to get anywhere. And so I really like the idea of what is this ID worth? Are there IDs I could be working on that would be even worth than that? What's the shortest path for me to build something that we can see traction and uncover a potential new way of revenue with minimum engineering? Iterating on this kind of thought process is maybe more like business oriented, but I think that for builders that use Cloud Code and Cursor and can move very fast, the actual problem that you're solving is becoming your actual value on the job market, I would say, because if you can solve valuable problem, not only solve them, but like find them and like help the team figuring out, then your value is way, way higher than if you're just good at doing what you're being told to do. What do you think? Any thoughts?
I think this is exactly how you want to position yourself in the market. You don't want to be the guy who is proficient with Crew AI or LangGraph. That's not the first skill I'm going to look at if I want to hire someone. But instead, I want to see if that person is able to understand when to use one and when to use the other. And also, how capable is that person when it comes with using this generative AI vibe coding tool, which are part of our work. I'm using them all. I try to test them all. No ways I'm going to stop working with those tools. But there is a huge difference between someone who is using those tools, someone who's using this generative AI vibe coding tools, and someone who knows how to design properly a solution and a system that is going to be in production. That's a different thing. You can ask Cloud Code to, write a new function, to fix a bug. You can have to fix some tests. But if you ask Cloud Code to integrate something into a very complex repository, that's complicated. You have so many moving parts. And even if you're going to get something out of it, you still need control and you have to take the responsibility if something goes wrong. We have to use those tools, but what I usually say is we also need to understand how. And I'm also working on it. I'm also trying to figure out what's the best way for me to use those tools to keep my design choices, but also to be sure that whatever the tool does is going to be up to me. I can take the blame if something goes wrong. So I'm accountable, but I want to use those tools. It's a trade-off, but I'm also working on it.
Love that. Amazing. So just for time, I think that this one was very interesting, and you have another few articles in Medium. I do agree about all the above. We were doing the analogy earlier with Miguel that basically you cannot reproach the tool to do something wrong. I mean, it's like cutting a tree with an axe and then you hurt your foot and you're like, hey, that axe sucks. Nope. You don't know how to use it. And I think it's similar with those tools. The only thing is that, yeah, it can damage your code base. And yeah, if it has the wrong MCPs and the wrong permissions, it can delete your database. Yeah, that, but don't do it. Like for guardrails, use it right. Use it the right way. Look at YouTube videos on how to do it.
And if it does, I mean, you can also do the same. You can drop your DB, but then it's your fault. You know, if one of those tools does it, who's going to take the blame? Is it you, or you're going to say it was the tool, you know?
And don't write a LinkedIn post about why Cloud Code sucks. Please don't do that. Don't do it.
Right.
But just as a wrapper, I've learned a lot and this was super hands-on. I would have many questions because the cool thing chatting with you is that we can go deep in a lot of directions, from C++ to fine-tuning models to different languages and building things. And we haven't touched on what you're building for your current company. So I think that a lot remains to be discussed. As a wrapper, I'd love to hear you on who are you following recently? What are like the tools that you're using the most on your day-to-day? So it can be like Cursor, VS Code, Cloud Code, but it can also be like the models you're using the most, for what reason, all that kind of thing. So like people and tools that you're actually currently using mainly in your tech stacks for the projects you're working on.
First LLMs I'm trying to kind of exploit is set of LLMs, not only one, like really small LLMs with just up to maybe 1 billion, maybe less than 1 billion of parameters. And the reason is because I want to put them like, I'm working on creating something on my Raspberry Pi 5.
Okay. Nice.
I have too many Raspberries. I think one is here probably. So it's like everywhere there is a Raspberries.
What's the coolest thing that's running on one of your Raspberry? What's the thing that you've built that's currently being used that you're proud of?
So now I'm playing a lot with N8N.
Oh, yeah, me too. I love it. Okay.
And I'm using it for a lot of automations, plus kind of pleasing my girlfriend because she has some TV series that she wants to watch, but that like kind of these TV series are like kind of on air when she's working, and I'm like making sure that I get those stuff. And there is a long process to do it. It seems easy, but there is a long process. So I'm trying to do everything with my Raspberry. But also I play a lot with Telegram. I love Telegram bots, so I use my Raspberry. And another thing I'm trying to do is having a small assistant on my Raspberry to manage a couple of things.
Okay.
So I'm working a lot with Tiny Llama, even smaller, very stupid LLMs, not as smart as ChatGPT, but they can do simple stuff, like simple tasks. And I'm trying to kind of understand what's the real limit of those models.
That's awesome. Wow, there is an entire episode there. Quick question on that. Do you have like a private cloud and private VPN so that you manage your N8N and workflows on your Raspberries?
I am self-hosting an N8N on my Raspberry, and I have WireGuard to access the VPN. So basically, I just access with a VPN, with a private VPN, and that's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Got it. So you're doing that. Any other tools and cool people that you're actually really learning from?
I mean, now I have to say that I'm really focused on N8N. So I think everyone should experiment with it. It's a crazy tool, and you can do so many stuff. You can easily execute it on your local machine. I'm working a lot with Cloud Code. After using Cursor for a while, I'm working with Cloud Code, and I love it. I'm trying to replace Cursor, not because I don't like it, but just because I want to try something new. But I also tried some agents, also tried custom tools for Cloud Code. So you can create some custom functions and do something specific, and Cloud Code is going to call those functions. That's also something people should experiment with, because you have your Cloud Code, But then if something special happens, Cloud Code will call the specific tool to do something. If you use Cloud Code, you should definitely try that feature. And in general, whatever you're using, experiment with tools. Try to integrate tools into your agent workflows, because I believe that that's going to be the future. Like understanding how to write the right tools for the right agents is going to be the future, in my opinion.
And regarding people, like who would you enjoy following the most or learning from?
I have a lot of names. This is a question that I get many times. I have a lot of names, but I don't really remember them. I have them on LinkedIn. So I follow so many people, so many content creators. I remember, I mean, just people I was chatting with during the last week. Miguel, for instance, but also Paolo is the director of Open Data Science Community on Medium. Like to chat with him sometimes. He's definitely a person you should follow on LinkedIn. He puts a lot of content, creates a lot of content. So I think he's one of those guys you should definitely follow. But also some other people, but I forget their names because I'm like, I look at the content. I'm like, and it's not the first time I get this question. I'm like, guys, I'll send you an email. I don't remember.
Substack or like a Medium. And like those are all the cool people I follow them.
I should do so many things.
I know, right? This is a problem when you're continuously building. It's just like too many ideas for what you can build. Or is it? Maybe you can have agents.
I'm really trying to automate some stuff now, and I have some cool ideas. And I will talk about that probably on Substack, but really I need to build an agent that gives me more time. That's probably what I need.
You have a swarm of employee agents that do things for you. Awesome. So +1 on everything you said. Also big fan of N8N. I'm doing a lot of workflows for the podcast that are like supporting me, but also making me better in different ways, or like consolidating things or ideas. I really like the idea of Telegram integrations or other kind of things, because you can really supercharge yourself with like your thinking process and your to-do list and like tackling problems, etc. So like building the systems that are actually going to do more and more things for you, I think compounds. And also, like you mentioned, N8N, for example, you can have it hosted in their cloud solution paid payment, but you can download everything and self-host it either on in AWS or another cloud provider, or even on your Raspberry Pi. So that's awesome. Also, +1 on Cloud Code. I haven't tried like all the CLI that went out recently, like Codex. I haven't. The CLI of Gemini or Google, I haven't played with much either. I haven't tried Windsurf. I think it's very important to context switch a lot of the time and try new tools and not only try them, but like understand what great looks like, because they have a learning curve. So you cannot go to Cloud Code and think it's like your store and like apply this. Like, for example, there is a YouTube channel called AI Labs, and they are doing very cool tutorials on how to best leverage Cloud Code. And once you look at it, you're like, okay, I was doing it wrong. Cool. So that's awesome. We're a bit over time. So any last thoughts? Where can people find more about yourself? You have your website on your LinkedIn. Of course, you're on LinkedIn, on Substack, on Medium, on Mentor Cruise. Anything else we should add to the list? Or like, where are you going to be speaking next? Anything happening soon?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's probably first place. And then from there, you can find my website. And from my website, you can find all the stuff that I'm doing. Substack is something I'm going to use more and more. It's always a matter of time, but I want to use it more. It will be at some point the central platform for me. Speaking of what's next, I will be in Porto in October, 2 times actually, talking about agents. So if someone is in Porto, please reach out.
The 7th of October and the 20th of October, you'll be in Porto.
Right.
At these conferences, and like you have your Substack, your Medium, everything. Amazing. My last question to you is, do you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community?
If you start from software engineering, if you start from building good software, no matter if you're using Cloud AI, Cursor, whatever, if you start with that thing in mind, you're going to build something great, no matter what you're doing, what you're working on. But don't start from the platforms, the tools, whatever. Start from software engineering and trying to have that problem-solving mindset. That's the only thing I like to share about this.
That's amazing. Alessandro, thank you very much for coming on the show. And everyone, I hope that you had a great time. Let us know in the comments what you thought about that episode, or if you have follow-up questions. And I'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.